Now, today we're doing a combo update between both Jasmy as well as Kaspa because we've seen both of them have some pretty decent headline updates. So I want to talk about both of those as well as just overall what's going on within the wider crypto market because we're starting to see a pretty nice push from altcoins coming back again. And again, it's really hard to say if this is just a continuation of the next leg up for altcoins or if this is potentially a little bit of a fake out before we go into a bit of a larger pullback. Although we did have a decent bit of a pullback already. So it's really hard to say exactly what's going to be happening within the next, several days, weeks, months, whatever. But overall, what we are seeing, at least as of today, based on the news of, I would say, increased optimism towards rate cuts coming in September has really sent crypto flying basically all throughout. So that's what I want to talk about first, and then we will go into the individual updates for both Kaspa as well as Jasmy. If you guys are interested in both of those, feel free to stay tuned, as well as just all of the things that we have going on within the crypto market. Also, we do have a trade update from that trade we took yesterday as well. So without any further ado, let's go on ahead and we'll first go getting started taking a look at the crypto bubbles. We can see here a really strong move up for basically everything yesterday. You could see surprisingly OKB, one of the only ones I should say that's down. But you could see, Bitcoin moving up about 2.7%, Virtual's up over 10%, Aave over 20, Pingu over 20, Arbitrum over 20, Athena almost 20. We see Solana up 13%, which that is been a little bit of a laggard compared to some of the others. Ethereum kind of outperforming it primarily, but you can see here Ethereum up 11%, so still an amazing move from Ethereum, but Solana actually starting to outperform Ethereum, at least in this kind of a limited time frame here. And then we can also see Aerodrome jumping. We've talked about that one, and then I'll get this one from behind my picture, but you could see here also we do have Kaspa up about 5%. Nothing super crazy from Jasmy. We'll go take a look at the chart. You can see we had a little bit of some short-term movement, but nothing that actually kind of stuck. So we'll be talking about that one here in a little bit, but we'll get there when we get there. So first off, I did want to go take a look at the trade that we did yesterday. I mentioned on the video that we did that I had opened up a Bitcoin trade about 5-10 minutes prior to kind of recording the video. We saw actually, it was right before we recorded the video, but you can see here, ended up making $1,000 off that trade, which is pretty good. It's pretty much kind of like an in and out type of trade. You can see here, entry price of about 112,200. And then closing it around 116,200. We actually got closer to 117,000 at that point. So it's not like I definitely called the top here. I did get pretty close to calling the bottom though. So that was a pretty good move overall. If you are interested, of course, in kind of following along with some of these trades, you can check the links in the description below. I do have the links to BTCC as well as Blowfin and WEEX. You can see here I am using WEEX, so I do have that link in the description below as well. But BTCC does have a really strong deposit bonus with 10% of your money essentially coming in for free. So if you are interested in kind of maximizing the value of your referral and deposit bonuses, that's probably the best one to use. As I said, all of these bonuses are only available if you do use my link in the description below. So just feel free to do that if you are interested. Now, moving along, we'll go ahead and we'll check out Kaspa, and we'll look at the kind of the trading view Kaspa chart because there's a couple of things that I wanted to show you here. So first off, I think hopefully it becomes relatively clear here that we can see a pretty long consolidationary structure happening here for Kaspa. Now, of course, on the bottom side, it's not exactly perfect, but you can see aside from these couple of kind of breaks outside of this consolidationary structure, you can see it holds it pretty well. We've got some wicks here, a couple of candles and wicks here, couple actually a whole bunch of consolidationary pressure, and it was almost like that consolidation kind of that melt up before we really popped on Kaspa about a couple months back, I guess about a month, 6 weeks back from now. You could see a really strong kind of correlation along this trend line. You can see we have actually touched it another couple of times since then. Now on the upper side, you could see what I am seeing is kind of a much longer and flatter type of trend line here that has basically been going ever since the beginning of January here in 2025. So it's been going basically all year so far, this kind of consolidationary type of structure. And if we look a little bit more kind of short term, keep in mind these are also the daily candles. So we're looking at over a much longer time frame than what we might otherwise be seeing. But you can see here, there is kind of this shorter term, steeper trend line that we are seeing here that could potentially be getting respected here for Kaspa. But it's my opinion that if we do see kind of a breakthrough, we might even be able to kind of tighten this just a little bit. But if we do see it kind of break through this trend line, I don't think it's going to be super likely that we just immediately like teleport back to the upside, right? We've seen kind of we've seen the precedent so far, particularly with these moves back in May and then also in later July, that when we get back up to this trend line, it's going to be very difficult to break. And at this point, the trend line is right around 11 cents. So you can see here, the first move up, we saw a move to about 13 cents for Kaspa. Then after that, we saw a move about 11.8, 11.9 cents. And then now, if we were to see another move back to the upside, depending on when it happens, it could be as low as about 11 cents. So finding that, potentially third lower high, fourth or fifth even, if we kind of zoom a little bit further out. So definitely the lower highs are quite the trend here, but we are also seeing the higher lows. As I mentioned from the downside here, even though these two did kind of break out, aside from this one, we've still kind of maintained the higher lows as well. So Kaspa looking pretty decent here. We also do have some really, really good news for Kaspa that, in my opinion, we really haven't seen any of the move on. Maybe that's just because the market doesn't really care. Maybe it was because it was on the back of some otherwise really, really strong news yesterday, so it didn't really get its own little effect. We'll have to see for sure, but we'll be going over that here in just 1 second as well. Also, I did want to take a look at Jasmy really quick. The kind of main story and the main news with Jasmy here is you can see it's this 0236 level. This is both a fib level as well as kind of like that 2-cent psychological resistance. You can see here it's been a really tough nut to crack. You can see we had a decent bit of support before we initially fell through, and then we've been rejected, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half maybe times here. So we've been rejected a decent bit kind of at this level. And so I think this is going to be kind of the main thing we're keeping an eye on. Also, similarly here, you can see that we are seeing higher lows consistently coming in for Jasmy. Again, maybe not like exactly a perfect trend line coming here, but you can see, actually pretty decent-ish looking trend line. But you can see here, the higher lows quite clearly on display here, kind of through this trend line. So maybe that we get to a point where we could potentially break through this. I think this is something to watch very, very closely. If we do see a break through this 2-cent range for Jasmy, we are going to be watching this very, very closely. It's going to be important to see kind of exactly what happens here. So next up, let's take a look at some of the news that we have for the day here. The first one you could see, as it does relate to Jasmy. Jasmy is officially the #1 bullish coin on CoinMarketCap, which is of course really good to see. Jasmy has had a little bit of kind of a mixed performance recently, so the fact that we are starting to see some of the momentum coming back to Jasmy, I do think is good. Jasmy, as we do know, is a very narrative-based and narrative-driven coin, so having some of that narrative coming back, I think, is going to be really good to see. Obviously, looking at price, we could see a lot of the sentiment and interest has died down, and with that, some of the price action has died down as well a little bit. So, but I do think from a structural perspective, things are looking good. If we can break through some of these levels, it's going to be very, very good for us in the longer term. So I want to be just paying very close attention to what we see, as I mentioned, particularly around that 2-cent range. That is kind of the golden price zone, at least for us right now. Now, moving along, I want to talk a little bit more about Kaspa, because there's a little bit more to update on Kaspa this week. Oh, the other thing I want to mention about Jasmy before we move on is we still haven't seen many updates from the team. This is becoming a little bit more of a trend here than I would maybe care to see, but it is what it is. We can only hope and trust that the team is kind of working away, and they will have some really cool and interesting updates for us. But again, that's basically all we have to go off of, at least right now. Now, moving on to Kaspa, you can see here in less than 2 weeks, the first ever Kaspa smart contracts go live on the 31st of August. So at this point, it's about 8 days from now, as of the time of this recording. So we'll have to see kind of what type of impact that has for Kaspa. Usually in crypto, it's almost always a sell the news type of event. So I could see a potential rally, maybe leading up to the 31st of August, trying to kind of get people to get hyped up and jump in and think that like this is the moment when it's really happening. And then generally there is a sell-off. So I would say, again, this is just my opinion. I could be right, I could be wrong. I don't actually know what's going to happen for sure. But just in my experience, generally what I've seen is that's kind of the case. So if you start to see Kaspa price rise somewhat quickly prior to this smart contract reveal, just be careful, because it could be market makers trying to flush some liquidity through the Kaspa chart and just see, kind of catch people who aren't necessarily paying attention or who are acting without really understanding why. So just be very careful with that. But I do think that kind of a big picture long term, this is going to be a really good thing for Kaspa. As I have mentioned several times on the channel, Kaspa, I think itself is a fantastic project, but it's basically kind of rebuilding everything from square one to kind of work within the block DAG infrastructure, right? So they have to essentially get caught up to all of the things everybody else is doing. For example, smart contracts. This is not at all impressive in any way as it relates to crypto generally, right? Smart contracts are already a thing. They've already been a thing for years and years and years. And so this isn't something that's like, wow, this is so cool. It's more of like, yeah, well, like, this is like the very first levels of what we have to have getting done for this type of thing to become essentially like useful, right? I mean, that's kind of the main thing, is like, this is the bare minimum level of like acceptable for a useful and helpful product. And that's not to say that, over time they won't start to implement more things that are better and more useful and kind of more novel, I guess, inventions is what we could say. But at least for right now, they're just trying to play catch up to the rest of the market. And again, I don't think that this is a bad thing at all. I just think that this is something that we have to kind of keep in mind when we're like, considering various price targets or various movements in the price. Is, if smart contracts go live and price doesn't immediately explode, well, that's because like there hasn't necessarily been anything done here that's like change the project fundamentally, right? They just have a new thing that people can use. Whether they use it or not is a completely different question. So moving on, I want to take a look at just the last item here, which we can see a new listing pair is live on Kraken. Now, this is a really interesting thing that I am noticing here. So Kraken, of course, is one of the largest US exchanges. It's a very good exchange, strong exchange. It usually does quite well. And I would say it's a bigger deal than what people are kind of making it at this point. If we go back and we take a look at the Kaspa chart, we can see, of course, a couple decent moves over the past couple of days. Yesterday, we saw kind of that really large candle. And again, a lot of this is just because of the kind of the more dovish comments that we saw out of Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Now, we saw the listing happen actually just about, what would this have been, like 11 hours ago, 12 hours ago, something like that. So maybe this was potentially like also baked into this move. But I think kind of the general thing that I'm seeing and kind of the trend I'm looking to pull here is essentially the fact that we're like, other than Coinbase and Binance, I don't really think that we really see much of a move happening from exchange listings. Sometimes it works for very, very small coins, but other than Coinbase and Binance, it just doesn't really matter for some of these larger coins. And so, it'll be interesting to see if we do see a Kaspa listing on Coinbase and as well as Binance. I know that those are both kind of the big ones that people have been waiting on, so we'll have to see for sure. But overall, that's kind of what I have today for the update. Hopefully you found the information in this video useful. I would also really be interested in knowing, like, did you find these kind of hybrid combo updates between a couple of different projects? Did you find them interesting? Would you prefer I just focus on one? What's kind of your preference there? I figured I would try something new today and kind of see how it goes. I'd really be interested in knowing your feedback of, if you find it interesting or helpful or not. If you, of course, did find this video interesting and useful, you can feel free to subscribe. That does obviously help the channel. You can also like as well. And then if you are looking to stay updated with all the different things that we have going on, you can feel free to also hit that notification bell. That'll just notify you whenever I release a new video, so you can stay up to date with everything. Also, we'd love to have your comments and feedback on the trading updates. Is this useful? Is it not? What are your thoughts about it? I would love to know that as well. So anyway, also if any comments, questions, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to those as quickly as I can. It's been a really busy past several weeks, so I haven't been as good as I normally have been, but I am still trying to stay on top of it. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.